Hey, this is Mike Matthews from MuscleLife.com. Thanks for stopping by and checking out the podcast. In this episode, I want to talk about a couple things. One is a handful of diet and training mistakes that I think are probably the biggest mistakes you can make. These are mistakes I made personally for many years, so I know how problematic they can be. These are the mistakes that really account for the majority of the frustrations that people run into, both in their training, where they don't really get stronger over time, they don't really see improvements in the gym, and with their bodies, where it's kind of the same thing, where their body, they just tend to look the same year after year after year. They don't really see much in the way of muscle growth, and they're not really be able to get as lean as they want to get, and they're kind of just stuck in this middle ground, which, again, I know how that is because I was there myself. And then I also want to talk about a simple little concept that I ran into a few weeks ago. I wrote about it called minihabits and how you can use them to help you incorporate change into your life. This could be health and fitness type change. It could be, working out, starting working out, or maybe working out a little bit more to reach your goals, or dietary related things, cleaning up your diet, getting onto a proper meal plan and so forth, or just really, you can use this little tool for anything in your life that you want to, whether you want to stop doing something that don't want to be doing anymore, or whether you want to start doing something that you would like to be doing. It's an easy on-ramp for building up your willpower and self-control. All right, so let's start first with the diet and training mistakes. So the first big mistake that I see people making and that I made myself with diet, we'll start with a diet mistake, is basically not really paying attention and not really tracking or not really planning your calorie intake and macronutrient balance. Right now, it's very popular to just eat clean, and a lot of people that email me, especially if they're having trouble losing weight, are confused because they're eating clean, which means different things to different people, but generally what they're referring to is they're just eating a lot of nutritious foods, which is good, but they're not losing weight, or the weight loss has stalled, and no matter how cleaner their diet becomes, they can't lose any more fat. And I made this mistake for many years, where I would just eat based on my body's natural instincts, which isn't bad if you want to just maintain your body composition. I would always have protein with my meals, so my protein intake was probably actually a bit higher than it needed to be. And I would have a serving of carbs and a bit of fat, and I would just eat when I was hungry, and I would eat until I was not necessarily full or stuffed, but until I was satisfied. And doing that is okay if you want to maintain a relatively lean physique. I don't know how well that would work if you wanted to maintain a very lean physique. You'd really have to pay attention to the mirror, and you'd probably have to pay attention to like your waist measurement or your caliper readings, for body fat percentage purposes, because sometimes, if you, let's just say that you overeat, let's say you're a guy and you want to maintain like 7 to 8%, which is kind of where I'm at right now, or you're a girl and you want to maintain, I don't know, 16, 17 to maybe 18, 19%. If you overeat for a few days, if you, depending on what you're eating, especially if you overeat in terms of if you eat too much dietary fat, you're going to notice that a little bit in the mirror. You would notice that a little bit on a caliper, and then you'd have to adjust. If you really wanted to just go back to where you want to be, you then would have to adjust by eating a bit less the next couple days. It can be done, but when you are wanting to lose weight or wanting to gain weight, and you want to make sure that you're going to get results, you really want to be planning or tracking your food intake. I've talked a lot about clean eating. I think it's a good idea to eat nutritious foods, but it gets way too dogmatic, especially in all the foods that you're not supposed to eat, that some people deem as unclean and other people say are fine and whatever. I would say the only foods that I would really recommend you stay away from would be just the really obvious, like overly processed packaged crap, like TV dinners and microwavable apple pies and stuff like that are have trans fat, which is that's the one real type of food that or food molecule you want to stay away from. But otherwise, I mean, carbohydrates aren't the enemy, starchy carbs aren't the enemy, dietary fat is not the enemy, saturated fat, unsaturated fat, both, you should be getting both in your diet. So it's not so much about what you're eating, it's more how much you're eating. And, I've spoken about this a lot, so chances are it's not news to you, but in emailing with a lot of people, I find that people that know this, still, they try to fudge, they try to wiggle too much with their numbers. Like, they know they know where their intake should be. But when we really start looking at how they're eating and they really start counting up everything, they find out that they're overeating by 200 calories a day. Let's say that, and if you're trying to lose fat, that could be half of your deficit right there. And then the weekend comes and they get even a bit more, lax with it, and what should be, maybe their day that they're going to have their cheat meal on, maybe they should be ending, if you go 300-400 calories, maybe 500 calories over your normal intake one day a week, and especially if you do it with a bunch of carbs, it's going to be fine. But when you're going 1,500 calories over and it's a bunch of dietary fat as well, that's a problem. So if you're cutting if you should be in a, let's say, 400 to 500 calorie deficit per day, and then you turn that into a 200 calorie deficit, 6 days a week, and then one day you're 1,500 calories over with a bunch of dietary fat, that can all even out to very little to no actual fat loss. Let's say you lose maybe 50 grams or something like that instead of the pound that you were hoping to lose. So and these are people that technically know better, and but that when they're eating dinner, they want to take those extra couple bites, or when they're out on we're out at that restaurant and the massive pot of macaroni and cheese sounds good, they just eat it, and then some wine would go well, so they drink that too, and then so it goes like that, and that's a mistake that it has effects. Your metabolism is I find that, and this is also supported by research, that you do have some wiggle room. If you're dieting for weight loss, I generally tell people to try to be within 50 to 100 calories of your target. If you're a little bit over some days and you're a little bit under other days, you're going to be fine. But you only have so much flexibility. There is a point where if you start eating a few hundred calories more, then, because when we're calculating your intake, when we're calculating your total daily energy expenditure, it's not accurate to the calorie. You might be burning a bit more, you might be burning a bit less. So part of the game is learning your body and is kind of learning your numbers and seeing what you can get away with, in a sense. Because when you're dieting for fat loss, then really what you want to be doing is you want to be eating as much as you can while still losing a half a pound to a pound of fat per week. That's the goal. So some people, there are obviously there are baseline places to start, simple formulations. Like, I'll link an article down below that just lays out how to calculate your total daily energy expenditure, and then how to calculate your deficit, and then how to turn that into a meal plan. That's a place to start. But some people find that they have to eat a bit less to lose that half pound, a pound of fat a week. Some people find that they can eat a bit more, and that's part of that is just seeing what you can get away with your body. But you have to be realistic about it. Just because somebody else gets to eat, there are some guys that I come across. Usually it's guys that because their metabolism is very fast, when they were bulking, they were able to work up to, let's say, 4,000, 4,500 calories, and they start their cuts at like 3,500 calories. That sounds ridiculous. I can't do that. And they have to work their calories down. They don't get to just eat 3,500 calories a day and go from like 15% to 7. But the fact that they get to start high is definitely a benefit, because when they start working down, maybe they finish their cut at 2,500 calories a day, or maybe a little bit less. And that's great for them. But, for me personally, I have to start when I'm going to be cutting, I start it around, I can work my metabolism, my intake up to about 3,400 a day. And then I have to start at about 2,800 and then just work it down. And my cuts normally end, if I'm going to be getting very lean, if I'm going to be getting down to the 6% range, I'm ending around 2,000 calories a day. That's just how my body works. So part of it is learning your body and learning your metabolic, I'd say, capacity for gaining weight and for losing weight, and then also for maintaining. Like I find for maintenance, if I stay around 2,800 calories a day and I get plenty from carbs, I keep my dietary fat around 60, maybe 60, yeah, probably about 60, 70 grams, sometimes 50, depending on how I feel like eating. And I just get my protein is about 1 gram per pound, and all the rest comes from carbs. If I do that, then I can stay lean. My training is good. I'm getting enough dietary fat to support my hormones and just general health, and it works. That's my body, though, and you are going to have to learn your body. And that comes back to planning and tracking your food intake, because if you don't really know how much you're eating, there's really no way for you to learn your body. And if you do, though, and you do that for a while, one, you're going to get used to the calorie content and the macro content of different foods. So you're going to be able to, when you are going to be, off a plan for whatever reason, you still are going to have a good sense of how much you're eating. And also then, if you're going to make little changes in your diet on the fly, like, let's say, sometimes I'll eat a bit more for a few days because of whatever, if I'm working on a cookbook right now. So sometimes my dinners need to be a little bit bigger than I would normally like them to be, so I can adjust earlier in the day, or I can just go over my numbers for a couple days and then I can cut it back for a couple days. But that's just because I have a good sense of how much I'm eating and a good sense of what's in foods that, if I want to cut back a little bit on the potato for dinner or cut back on my something else earlier in the day, then I kind of know how much room I'm buying in a sense. So the summary of this mistake is, don't just wing your diet unless you are, I would say, an experienced flexible dieter in a sense. Like you know how your body works, more or less the calorie and macro content of different foods, and you're just maintaining. When I'm cutting, even I just make a meal plan and follow it. Eat the same stuff every day, or I make myself a couple options for meals, just because it keeps it simple, and that way I know that I'm going to lose the fat that I need to lose, and I can just get it over with and get back to maintaining, or go back into if I'm going to be bulking or whatever. But I don't want to be dragging a cut out because I'm just kind of being too loose with my calories, and then what should have taken 2 months takes 4 months, which is not just annoying in terms of the day-to-day experience, but it also sucks for training, because when you're in a calorie deficit, you're training for the first few weeks, it's probably okay, but then your strength starts to plateau, your energy levels start to plateau, and it's not misery, but it's not particularly fun. I don't look forward to some of my workouts when I'm in a deficit, especially if it's been 3 or 4 weeks. Like legs, heavy legs training is tough, heavy pulling is tough. You do it, but it's much more fun when you feel strong. So yeah, that's basically the summary of that mistake. All right, so let's talk about another mistake here. Let's go over to the training side, and this is the mistake is using the traditional type of ascending pyramid style of training, which is very popular. You'll find it recommended, in all the magazines and blah, blah, blah. And if you're not familiar with it, basically it's where you do a little warm up, and then your first set is going to be, let's say 12 to 15 reps with something, an appropriate amount of weight, let's say like 60% of your 1 rep max, and then you're going to rest, and then you're going to increase the weight and do whatever you can do there. Let's say it's 8 to 10, rest, increase the weight, 6 to 8, and so forth. And the reason why this style of training sucks is, as a natural weightlifter, what you really need to be emphasizing is heavy compound lifting. Of course, I talk about this all the time, but I'm just going to repeat it. And by heavy, I mean the 4 to 6 rep range or heavier, depending on where you're at in your training. If you're an advanced weightlifter, then you probably also want to be adding some very, very heavy powerlifting type, like 2 to 3 rep, and then an occasional 1 rep, which I talk about that in my book, Beyond Bigger, Leaner, Stronger, but that's more applicable to advanced weightlifters. However, whether you're new or advanced, heavy compound lifting needs to be your emphasis, and that's really where you want to be seeing your progress. You want to, if you can, over time, if you can work with heavy weight on the deadlift, squat, bench press, and military press. And in terms of bench press, I would say I put some emphasis on the incline bench press over the flat, although the flat, of course, is also important. If you can do that, you're going to make gains. You're going to build muscle, you're going to obviously build strength, but you're going to build the type of physique that you want. Doing that, though, requires that you emphasize those movements and in your workouts, and you emphasize heavyweight, not lightweight. And when you're doing a traditional pyramid style of training, by the time you get to that heavyweight, you're so fatigued you're not going to be able to move anywhere near the weight that you'd be able to move if you had done those heavy sets first. And so not only will your weight be down, but your reps are going to be down too. So let's say you could pull 315 for 4 if you were to just warm up and do it right away. But if you were to pyramid on the deadlift, so if you were to like take 225 and do 12 to 15 and then maybe 275 for 6 to 8, and then try 315 for, try to do it for the 4 to 6 or 4, maybe you get 2, maybe 1, maybe you can't even get it off the ground and you actually would have to go down to 295 just to get 4. That is not the way you want to train. I used to do it, and again, I learned the lesson of just being stuck in a rut for a long time. And when I started flipping it around, where I do all my heavy lifting, my heaviest lifting always comes first in my workouts. And depending what I'm doing, that's usually some very heavy stuff, like some 2 to 3 rep, and then I'm moving into 4 to 6 rep, and then I'm doing some 8 to 10 rep. That's beyond bigger, leaner, stronger. And if it's bigger, leaner, stronger, it's very simple. You're just working in the 4 to 6 rep range. And the reason why it's 1 rep range is because that's what people new to weightlifting or that have never done that style of weightlifting, that have done a bunch of high rep stuff, you need to spend probably about a year to a year and a half just building your strength in that rep range on those key movements. And that alone is enough to give you your first probably 20, 25 pounds of muscle and a real foundation of strength that you can then use to, I wouldn't say, that give you a foundation of strength that will allow you to make good use of higher rep ranges, because you'll actually be able to move some weight. One of the problems with the high rep ranges with when you're weak is you can't move any weight. You can't really cause much in the way of muscle damage or even progressive overload, because when you're working in the 12 to 15 rep range and you're not strong, your weight is going to be quite low, and you're going to be mainly just working on muscle endurance. And if that's what you want to be doing, if you just want to be able to do a bunch of reps on the bench press with 135, or if you wanted to be able to do a bunch of push-ups or a bunch of pull-ups or something like that, yeah, you just do a bunch, and that's how you build that muscle endurance. But if you want to build muscle and you want to get bigger, you have to get stronger, and the heavier weightlifting is what makes you stronger. I wouldn't say that lighter weightlifting doesn't make you stronger. Of course, it builds some strength, but if we look at it in terms of a continuum, on one end you have the very, very heavy, pure strength powerlifting type of lifting, and on the other end we have the very high rep, just muscle endurance type of lifting. You don't want to necessarily be in the middle. I think you want to be a little bit skewed toward the very heavy, which is that 4 to 6 rep range where you're lifting, about 80 to 85% of your 1 rep max, and you emphasize that in your workouts. And then if you're going to be doing some higher rep stuff, that's fine, but you do it after the heavy stuff. If you do it first, again, when you get to the heavy stuff, you're not going to be able to perform as well as you would if you'd done the heavy stuff first. And there's also just an energy point. Deadlifting, takes a lot out of you. Talk about deadlifting again, or squatting. Even if it is, lighter weights, if you're working the 8 to 10 rep range, 8 to 10 rep range with squats is pretty tiring. And when you if you were to do a few sets like that and then try to go real heavy, you're just going to have less energy. You're going to be more fatigued than if you would have just hit that heavy stuff right in the beginning. So to summarize, I don't recommend pyramid training, traditional pyramid training. Reverse pyramid training I do recommend, although I think it's better suited to advanced weightlifters that have enough strength to actually move good amounts of weight in the higher rep ranges. So if you're new to weightlifting, or if you have never really emphasized heavy compound weightlifting in your workouts, I recommend that you start with just doing that. Work in the 4 to 6 rep range, which is also, the simple underlying foundation of programs like starting strength and 5x5. You're working, 5 reps, 85% of your 1 rep max, adding weight to the bar over time. That's the key. All right, so let's go to the next mistake here. Let's go back to dieting. And this mistake is eating too little carbohydrate. Low carb dieting is really trendy right now. I've written quite a bit about it. I'm going to link, I think kind of like my definitive guide to why it's called, why low carb dieting sucks. I'll link it down below so you can check it out. But The bottom line is, if you are an overweight, sedentary person that doesn't do anything with your body, you don't need to be eating very many carbs. If you are an active person, however, and you are not extremely overweight, even if you are mildly overweight, carbohydrates are not your enemy. But especially if you're lean active and if you are weightlifting, carbs are definitely your friend. Carbs are what fuel your workouts, not just in terms of glucose in the blood, not just blood sugar, but in terms of glycogen in the liver, glycogen in the muscles. This is what you burn up when you're weightlifting. It's anaerobic activity. So the more glycogen, and the muscles can store a ton of glycogen, a lot. And the more you have in there, the better your workouts are going to be. The stronger you're going to be, the better you're going to feel in your workouts. Also, research shows that higher carbohydrate dieting is just better for muscle growth. And there are several reasons for this, which I talk about in the article below. You have one side of it is that in your training, you're going to be able to push more weight and push yourself further with a higher carbohydrate diet than a low carbohydrate diet, which of course that itself over time will build more muscle. But then there are also effects related to insulin, in that higher insulin levels. Insulin isn't anabolic like testosterone is, but it's anti-catabolic. And when we look at muscle growth, what we want to achieve is, at the end of the day, we want the amount of protein synthesis to exceed the amount of protein degradation. And insulin it helps us on the protein degradation side of things, in that it is anti-catabolic, so it prevents protein breakdown. So if we can lower that protein degradation and keep the protein synthesis at a good level, then we're going to build more muscle. Whereas if we were to do the opposite, where research shows that low carb dieting, we have people on a low carb diet, they when they're exercising and after exercise, there's higher levels of protein breakdown in their body. So you start, if here's the synthesis, and if the protein breakdown is creeping up, if they equal out, then that's no muscle build. Just like how it is with body fat. You eat food, your body stores fat. Your body then, as it runs out of the energy from the food, it starts burning fat, and it juggles. At the end of the day, if your body has burned more fat, which obviously we burn a fair amount of fat when we sleep. There's no food in us, and so we're gonna have a chunk of fat loss there. So if you looked at it in terms of 24 hours, if morning to morning your body has burned more fat than it has stored through your eating of food, your net fat content, total fat mass, has gone down. If it's the other way around, if because of overeating you have stored more fat than your body has been able to burn. And of course, burning fat means expending energy. So that's your basal metabolic rate. That's your activity level. That's exercise, everything you do. If you are eating, if you're feeding your body an excess amount of energy and it then stores more fat than it burns, your total fat mass has gone up. Muscle growth works in the exact same way. It's just the variables are different. Now we're talking about synthesizing, creating muscle proteins versus losing muscle proteins. And if that becomes imbalanced and it becomes weighted to the losing side, then you lose muscle. So when we're trying to build muscle, we want protein, everything we can do to accelerate or to raise protein synthesis rates and lower protein degradation rates is going to benefit us. And a high carbohydrate diet has been proven to do that. High carbohydrate dieting doesn't make you fat. Carbohydrates don't cause weight gain. Insulin is not the enemy. I'll link an article down below on that. Insulin is actually your friend. And a lot of this also is just kind of common sense and just kind of comes down to everything in moderation, and balance is basically almost always the answer. And that's also in lifestyle. I mean, if somebody they don't move their bodies, they don't exercise, they sit in chairs all day, they sit in their car, that's an imbalanced life. And so for that person, they may need to imbalance their diet to compensate for their imbalanced lifestyle. And that imbalance is carbohydrate reduction. That person's body doesn't need energy. For what? They don't move. So probably 50 grams of carbs a day is probably enough for that person. But if you have a balanced lifestyle, which means that you exercise regularly, which is what you're supposed to be doing. Our bodies were not made to just sit around and do nothing. Just look at it from an evolutionary standpoint. Not too long ago, our lives were endangered by, predatory animals probably 10 times a week, if not more. And we were always on the run trying to kill food and just struggling to stay alive. And that's what our body has adapted to, is high levels of activity, high levels of danger, high levels of stress, physical stress. And this modern lifestyle is new, it's different, and the body's not made for it. So that's where you've probably seen research that associates sedentary living, just sitting, with all-cause mortality, in terms of just developing all types of disease and just dying. I'll link a study down below if you haven't, so you can check it out. But basically, the more you sit, the more likely it is you're going to die of something, is what it boils down to. And that sounds a bit sensationalist, but it's true. And the association is particularly strong, not so much with working, actually, interestingly enough, but it's particularly strong with people that go home and just sit in front of the TV, and don't move their bodies. That's really where the association comes in. For people like me, where I'm sitting all day when I'm working, although I do stand up and I stretch every 20 or 30 minutes or so, I kind of have that as a little routine, just to. I find if I sit for too long, also I get kind of my muscles can get kind of crampy from working out and whatever. But someone like me, or probably like you, we sit for. I mean, in my case, I'm probably sitting for 11 hours a day or so, which is a lot of sitting. But I'm also in the gym in the morning, obviously moving my body. Weightlifting is not only is it training my muscles, but it's improving or maintaining my flexibility. It's also moving my lymph system, keeping that going. And then I'm sitting, and then I like to do cardio a few times a week. I enjoy it, so it's also moving my body. So in that scenario, when we're looking at my lifestyle in light of the research on sitting, I wouldn't be putting myself at risk for anything. But if I were not exercising and I would just wake up, sit in the car, sit at the office, sit in the car, sit on the couch, go to bed, that is a dangerous way to live. So back to just how this relates to dieting. If you have a balanced lifestyle, if you are moving your body, you are exercising regularly, then a balanced diet is what you want to be going with. And a balanced diet is, for instance, the standard balanced diet in the fitness world is about 40% of your calories coming from, this depends on how many calories you're eating. If you're eating a lot of calories, these numbers would change a little bit, but the standard baseline is about 40% of your calories from protein, about 40% from carbohydrate, and 40% from dietary fat. And that is a high carbohydrate diet, by the way. So I'm not talking about an excessively high carbohydrate diet. I think there's like some stupid 80-10-10 thing, 80% of your calories from carbohydrate and then 10% from protein, 10% from fat. That's ridiculous. That's stupid. That's unhealthy. Too little protein, too little dietary fat, and tons of carbs. Why? There's no scientific reasoning behind that. And that's just one day the people following those types of diets, if they truly are. Sometimes I don't believe it. Like, you'll see some girl on YouTube that eats 82,000 bananas a day or something. I'm not sure I even believe that she doesn't also have protein outside of that. And, there's when you start, when there's money to be made, and especially when there's a lot of money to be made, people can get pretty funny. And they lose their moral compass. It breaks very, very quickly. And if that means, lying about this, that, fudging this and that, yeah, it's easy to justify it to yourself when there's a lot of money on the line. So that's not all I'm talking about for high carb dieting. I'm talking the average person. I'm talking somewhere between 1 and 2 grams of carbs per pound of body weight. So to summarize, don't go for the low carb crap. It's just there's no real benefit in it. You're not going to lose fat faster. Your training is going to suck. Your energy levels are probably going to suck. And for what? You're not going to. There's no benefit in it. And I've had people try to then take the health angle and say, well, point to research showing that carbohydrate intake, it's related to increased triglyceride levels and other things that could be a problem with your health or impair or decrease longevity. But when you look at a lot of that research, it's research done with diseased individuals or with obese people that are also sedentary in many cases. But even if they're not sedentary, an obese person's body, how it deals with carbohydrate, how it deals with food is very different than a leaner, healthy person, especially a lean, healthy, active person. And don't forget that exercise is the number one it's the number one healthiest thing you can do for your body. There are so many benefits that exercise has that, in it, my personal take on longevity in general, I want to live long. I want to be mentally and physically healthy. I would like to be able to play with my great-grandchildren one day. I'm into all that. But at the same time, I want to be able to enjoy my life. I don't want to be paranoid over every little thing that I eat. I don't want to restrict, entire food groups or every time I have a dessert, feel guilty because I think I just, took 10 minutes off my lifespan or something like that. And that's not just me deluding myself, because a lot of that's, like I said, a lot of these types of claims are bullshit. And regular exercise can undo the harm, I guess you could say, of maybe some other doing certain things that maybe are not so healthy, but you can balance so much of it with exercise. And I'm not saying that there are certain things, certain unhealthy habits that I just will never get into, like smoking and drinking, for instance. I mean, smoking is horrible for your health. There's no arguing that. Just go look at any of the research that's out there. Regular, drinking alcohol occasionally is not bad for your health. If you're having a drink or two a week, you're probably fine. But regular alcohol intake, terrible for your health. And again, just go look at the research. It's there. It's very clear. But I'm talking more like, let's say that wheat was not so great for your health. It's not the killer that a lot of people say it is, and I'll link an article down below where I talk about this. But let's just say every time you ate wheat, let's just say it caused a little bit of inflammation in the body. There's actually not, that is more of a myth than anything else, but let's just say that were the case. And you don't necessarily eat wheat every day, but you like to have some wheat here and there. Well, regular exercise is amazingly effective at reducing systemic inflammation. So who cares? So you'd have some wheat and maybe it'd cause a little bit of inflammation, but you're so on point in every other, you exercise regularly, you're getting the majority of your calories from nutritious foods, your body is working so well, you got it in such a good state that you can afford little things like that. You can afford to go on vacation and just eat a bunch of sugar for a few days. And yeah, you don't feel so great and maybe you gain a couple pounds, but then you come back, you just you cut for a week, you cut back on the sugar intake, and there's no residual effect. So just keep that in mind, that if you're doing what you need to be doing with your body, if you're exercising regularly, you're training your muscles regularly, you're maintaining cardiovascular health, you're eating a lot of nutritious foods. There are a lot of supplements out there, the health type supplements that I like. Well, I wouldn't say a lot. There are a handful that I really like that have a lot of great benefits, like fish oil, spirulina, curcumin, ginseng. There are things that you can take that have a lot of good research behind them that also can fight inflammation, improve longevity, improve your immune system, and so forth. If you're doing all these things, you don't have to worry so much about eating a bit more carbs than the other person, or eating a bit more sugar than the other person. And by the other person, I mean the person that's 30 pounds overweight, sedentary, smokes, drinks. Yeah, that person's kind of fucked. That's true. One day they're probably going to die of a heart attack or of a stroke or of some other disease, diabetes, whatever. Yes, that's true. But just because research shows that certain things cause bad reactions in their bodies and are not good for their bodies, or really not good for their bodies, doesn't necessarily mean that's going to apply to you with a healthy body. All right, so let's go on to the next mistake here. Training related this time. And this mistake is pretty simple. Most people make it, and it's resting too little in between sets. I used to do this because I thought that, I guess I thought like if I'm working out, then my heart needs to be going. I need to be drenched in sweat. I need to feel like I'm really exerting myself. And that was part of the thrill of it. Also, there's the chemical rush that gives you. And also the feeling of like that I'm not being lazy, and that's kind of like the achievement of working out and so forth. But what I've basically learned is, and this is backed by research as well, I'll link an article down below where you can go look at some of these studies. But basically, the when you're working with heavier weights in particular, like let's say you are working with 4 to 6 rep, 85% of your 1 rep max, which by the way, I want to just clarify something. I think that advice is best suited to men. For women, I think that you should start your weightlifting in the 8 to 10 rep range and build your foundation there. And then it'll probably take you 6 to 8 months, 6 to 10 months to build a solid foundation in the 8 to 10 rep range. And then you can start adding in some 4 to 6 rep range work. Many women that I'm working with, what we find works really well for them is they start their workouts with 3 to 6 sets of 4 to 6 reps, and then they do 3 to 6 sets of 8 to 10 reps for the other exercises. Not all 4 to 6 because some women's bodies are able to take it, but many women find that it leads to a bit of overtraining, and it's hard to balance the weekly volume, and it's hard to balance frequency because women's bodies simply can't repair muscle like men's bodies, mainly because of hormonal differences. So just to clarify that, sometimes when I'm talking, I just instinctively, I'm always kind of talking about guys because I'm a guy, but I need to remember that I need to also address, some of these things for women. So I'll clarify anything else that needs to be, changed for women. But yeah. So anyways, back to this point here. So if you're resting, a lot of people rest. They don't know. A lot of people I see, they don't watch the clock. They don't have a stopwatch. They just rest. Let's say sometimes it's 60 seconds, sometimes it's 90 seconds, sometimes they get in a conversation, it's 5 minutes. But the problem with that is if you rest too little, it's going to impair your strength. And that's been proven that let's say you're trying to work in the 8 to 10 rep range or the 4 to 6 rep range. If you only rest a minute, your sets are going to, let's say you get 225 on bench for 5, and then you rest 1 minute, you might get 3, let's say 2. If you rest for 2 minutes, you might get 4. If you rested for 3 minutes, you'll probably get 5 again. And that's important because when we're weightlifting, realize that the whole goal is building strength. That's what we want to do. It's not necessarily, who cares of whether our heart rate is up, is high or low? Who cares whether we're sweating? Save that stuff for your cardio. When you're lifting weights, what you want to be doing is adding weight to the bar over time, and rest time in between sets has a big effect and has a big impact on this. So general rules of thumb are, if you are working in the 8 to 10 rep range, I recommend you rest 2 minutes in between sets, and keep track of this. Like I just use, my iPod has a little stopwatch. That's what I use. And if you are lifting, let's say if you're doing 4 to 6 rep work, I recommend 3 or even 4 minutes of rest in between sets. Personally, I do 3, sometimes 3.5. But if you're still feeling, if let's say you do feel your heart is still going after 3 minutes and you are not, that's really what you're looking for. You're looking that your heart rate has come down and you're ready to do the next set. You can go up to 4 minutes. And if you're doing even heavier stuff, like when I do 2 to 3 rep or 1 rep work, I'm resting 4 to 5 minutes in between sets. And the whole purpose is to maintain that heavy weight without going so long that my muscles start cooling off, and then that can also impair performance. But if you just follow those simple guidelines, then you will notice that if you are under resting, you'll notice that you're able to maintain your weight and you're able to push more weight, which is going to help you make gains over time. And if you're over resting, you'll find that your workouts are not only shorter, but you will be able to maintain your performance better on the exercises, and you'll probably find it a bit more enjoyable. There is a point where if you're resting too much and then you come back to do your sets, you lose the intensity, you lose the focus, so you're able to maintain it with a little bit shorter rest. Okay, so I have quite a few more that I could go into of these mistakes. I'll link both of the articles down below so you can read. I do have some more, so you can go check those out. But I don't want to go on forever on this, so let's just flip now over to the next little subject, which is this mini habits concept. I ran into this, I read an article on it, and then I read a book on it, and I thought it's a great, simple little concept, so I wrote my own article, which I'll link down below. And basically the concept is you want to change a habit, you want to install a habit, so you want to stop doing something that you don't want to be doing anymore, or you want to start doing something like following a diet, starting an exercise routine, starting reading a book every week, whatever, it doesn't matter. You can try to go all in. Some people are good at that. I'm pretty good at that. If I decide I want to do something, I kind of just work out what is it going to take to get to where I want to go, and let's just do that, and that's fine. But it's the mini habit concept is start very, very small. Start with something that's so small that you almost can't fail at it. So if it's working out, maybe you start with doing one push-up a day, which is what the author of the book that I read, which you'll find in the article, that's how he started his workout routine. And ironically, I actually don't know if he's on the program now, but now he has done my program now, Bigger, Leaner, Stronger. But it started with just one push-up a day. And he had tried to get into workout programs in the past, and it didn't go anywhere. It didn't go well for him. So he started with one push-up a day. You can't fail at one push-up a day. And then, okay, fine, 5 push-ups a day. 10, 20, 50, 1 day a week at the gym, 2 days a week at the gym, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so it's just a very, very simple little concept. Whatever you want to start doing, if it's follow a diet, for instance, let's say your diet is you just eat too much fast food, junk food, whatever, you're eating too much food. And that type of food, not only is a lot of that food actually just straight unhealthy because of the junk in it, it's also very calorie dense. It's very hard to meal plan when one meal is 1,500 calories with like 100 grams of fat. It just makes it impossible, basically. So maybe first you just cut out, maybe you don't even cut out. Let's say that you're drinking a lot of soda. Bad idea. Drinking calories is just a bad idea. It's a simple recipe for getting fat is just drink a bunch of calories because it doesn't satiate you and it skyrockets your calorie intake. So let's say you cut your soda intake down by 1 can a day. You do that for a week or two. Cut it down by 2 cans a day. Do that for a week or two, et cetera, till let's say you have the soda gone now and you don't even miss it. You're fine. Or replace it. Replace the soda with something, let's say there are like sweetened waters out there or sweetened flavored waters, let's say, and then maybe you just change that to water. I just like to drink water personally. But, and then you go after something else. Let's say you normally eat a bag of chips a day. So, instead, you eat half a bag of chips and you throw the other half away, or you save the other half for the next day, whatever. So then now maybe you only eat a quarter of that bag a day until you get rid of the chips and so forth. And this also builds momentum. And you'll find that if you do this, if you just make little changes, adding or subtracting from the things that you want to add and subtract from, you will gain some momentum. You'll gain some, it sounds stupid, but almost some confidence in yourself. Like, okay, you can do this. This is not so hard. And then you'll start becoming more ambitious. You'll make bigger jumps. And maybe you're going to go from 2 days a week at the gym to 4, just because it seems, why not? That's when you can look at it and just go, yeah, sure, why not? If there's no question in your mind that you're going to do it, that's what you want to be. You don't want to try to be taking on things where a part of you says you're not going to be able to do it. Are you really going to be able to? Probably not. You can always, whatever, you'll give it a try. You want to stay away from that. Instead, you want to just pick things where you just go, I can't fail at that. That's so simple. And what you feel like you can't fail at will get bigger and bigger as you do better and better in whatever it is that you want to do. So that's the gist of the mini habit. I think it is something that, again, I would check out the article I wrote and check out the book, especially as we're coming into January. It's going to be the whole new year, new you thing, New Year's resolutions, where people are going to make the mistake of committing to changing every single aspect of their life and becoming, the person they've always wanted to be, and blah, blah, blah. And that's good, but it doesn't work for many people. For most people, it doesn't work. Much smarter is just commit to some simple little changes and see where it goes. Maybe at the end of the year, you will end up achieving that big, I'm a new person now in some aspect of your life. But I would personally recommend that you start much smaller, and the mini habit concept can help you with that. All right, so I'll cut it off here so we don't go on too long. I hope you enjoyed the podcast, and I will see you next time.